Hello and welcome to Runkle of the Bailey. My name is Ian Runkle. I'm a Canadian criminal defense and firearms lawyer. Recently, a friend asked me if I could do some episodes on the show Riverdale. Now, I'm not a watcher of Riverdale, but this is a friend of mine who I just recently gave away at her wedding, so I couldn't really say no. If you're not familiar with the show, Riverdale is a gritty reboot of Archie comics, which is a sentence I never thought I would say. But I'm not really sure what we'll see next. Perhaps a gritty reboot of Winnie the Pooh, where Winnie goes on a blood-soaked revenge against Tigger, and later it turns out that Christopher Robin was really betraying him and really the mastermind of all of this. Hollywood, if you steal this, I want credit. I wouldn't say no to a wheelbarrow full of cash, but at least credit. Anyway, she was saying that there's a whole lot of legal issues that come up in the show, and so why not have a look at it? So I decided I'd look at the first episode, and it turns out there are a fair number of things I can talk about here. So I'll be using the show just kind of to illustrate some Canadian legal concepts. I'm going to be assuming that Riverdale takes place in Canada because I'm a Canadian criminal defense lawyer, and it wouldn't make much sense to assume it's anywhere else. Plus, I understand the show is filmed in Vancouver, so why not? All right, let's dive right in here and have a look at what's going on.
As the story that Cheryl told made the rounds, that Cheryl dropped a glove in the water, and Jason reached down to get it, and accidentally tipped the boat, and panicked, and drowned.
Collectively.
All right, so right off the bat, what we've got here is that apparently she is giving a statement, potentially to the police, but also possibly to the public. Now, at this point, all we know in the episode is that there's been some terrible accident, maybe, but it's worth considering, the possibilities here. Maybe this is an accident, maybe it's a homicide, maybe it's an accident and she could be held responsible in some fashion, because maybe she's negligent, maybe this is a manslaughter, all sorts of possibilities. So there's a couple of points here, just really briefly. I always tell people, it's a bad idea to give statements to the police. It's also a bad idea to give statements to the public. If you are potentially implicated in something that may be a crime, telling your friends what happened is a bad idea because the police can get statements from those people and it may be admissible as admissions. You have a right normally not to have to testify. So if she's simply being brought in because she's a potential witness, she can leave unless she's been arrested or detained. And if she has been arrested or detained, then certain rights are triggered. She's got a right to be informed promptly of the reasons therefor, to retain and instruct counsel without delay and to be informed of that right, and to have the validity of the detention determined. But she also has a right not to be compelled to provide a statement at all. And it is almost always a bad idea when you call a lawyer from in custody and say, hey, I'm being arrested, I'm being detained. The police want me to tell my side of the story. Should I do that? The answer is almost invariably going to be no. So yeah, and always will give a warning as well that, if you're not providing a statement to the police, you don't want to talk to anyone else around, not your friends, not your cellmate, not anybody else, because those people can also incriminate you. Now, you can see here as well that this is a situation where she might face tremendous pressures to do so. So something might be the best idea from a legal perspective, but there may be other reasons why people want to provide a statement. That ultimately, the weighing of that is something that ultimately rests with the client. But as lawyers, we tend to be cautious about the legal implications, especially if there's a death. All right, let's keep going and have a look at some more issues here.
And celebrate my brother's too short life on this mortal coil.
Critical issue. She's sitting up front because she is a teacher.
Thank you all.
Miss Grundy? Hey.
Archie, what are you doing walking in this heat?
Building character.
This is a bad idea.
Do you want to ride?
So they're giving us a little bit of backstory here. All right, so what we've got there is what is clearly a sexual relationship between these two characters. And it doesn't appear that either of them are not consenting in the standard sense of the word consent. However, uh, Archie's a high school character. And so we can assume he's somewhere in the range of 16 or 17. Now, if he's below 16, then there's a provision that actually states that notwithstanding whatever he might think, his consent is irrelevant. And that's section 150 of the Criminal Code. So consent, no defense. Subject to subsections 2 to 2.2, and those are for sort of close in age younger people. When an accused is charged with an offense under section 151 or 152 or subsection 153 sub 1, and they list a bunch of others, all of which are sort of sexual assault offenses, in respect of a complainant under the age of 16 years, it is not a defense that the complainant consented to the activity that forms the subject matter of the charge. So normally, consent is not just a defense, it's the critical issue. However, if we're talking about somebody who's under 16, then consent doesn't even matter. They cannot give lawful consent. However, there are provisions that can still cause problems for Ms. Grundy here, and that includes these provisions: sexual exploitation. So every person commits an offense who is in a position of trust or authority towards a young person, who is a person with whom the young person is in a relationship of dependency, or is in a relationship with a young person that is exploitative of the young person, and who, for a sexual purpose, touches directly or indirectly with a part of their body or with an object, any part of the young person. We see that in the clip, so that seems to be made out, and we don't really need to go to the invites, counsels, or incites part. And if you look at it, the punishment on this one goes up to 14 years with a minimum of 1 year if they proceed by indictment, or if they proceed summarily, a term of not more than 2 years less a day, and to a minimum punishment of imprisonment for a term of 90 days. Now, is Miss Grundy in a position of trust or authority towards him? That is going to be an open question, because the court will allow to infer this from all sorts of things, but she's his teacher. However, this is during the summer break, but he's expected to be going back. So there is a potential there for, for a relationship that involves some sort of authority over him. It's unclear, but certainly I would say that she is at risk of prosecution. She may be able to say, listen, it was summer break, there was no trust or authority during that time. The court might or might not agree with that, but it is a risky position for Ms. Grundy. So this is also relevant to what's going to be coming up fairly shortly as we continue here.
I was wondering maybe if you could help me.
With what, Archie?
You went to Juilliard, Miss Grundy. There is no one else in Riverdale I can take lessons from. Believe me, I've looked.
Well, I don't think that's a good idea.
So he's got an aspiring music career. He's written some songs. Everybody around thinks that they're pretty good. And now he's saying, listen, I want your assistance. I want your help. Of course, consider that if she is providing this help, that'll deepen the whole trust or authority aspect. Although it appears here that the relationship has been discontinued at this point.
I don't think we should be alone together.
Yeah, that's a thing you should have thought about before.
If this is you trying to restart something that never should have started in the first place.
No, it's not. It is about the music. But it's also... Come on, I need to be able to talk about what happened with someone.
So you can see, again, there is some dependence there. There is some reliance. That's not good for Ms. Grundy here.
We heard what we heard, and afterwards we didn't do anything. We didn't say anything.
We heard fireworks.
Who's lighting fireworks at 6 in the morning?
How would we explain why we were together at Sweetwater River at 6 a.m. on the 4th of July?
All right, so there's a few issues there. The first is they have, they are clearly witnesses to whatever took place there, because that was very apparently a gunshot. I I kind of wonder what's going on here with the show writers, that they're like, hey, because if they're out and in the woods, if this is any sort of rural small town, because they sort of play up Riverdale as a small town, I kind of feel like people would know what a gunshot was and probably also wouldn't be super fussed by it. Uh, if you're out, in rural areas, sometimes you hear hunters, you hear that sort of thing. So I don't know. But regardless, they've heard a gunshot, and this is a critical potential piece of evidence for the police. What time was this? When, where was this? All of these kinds of things. Now, do they have an obligation because they didn't say anything? Do they have to go to the police? And in Canada, the answer would be no. Just because you're a witness to something doesn't mean you have to cooperate with the police. It doesn't mean you have to help them. You may choose to do so, but you don't have to. Now, they have different kind of positions on this, because Archie here is not facing any potential criminal liability from what I can see. I don't see anything that he's done here that is criminal. Ms. Grundy, on the other hand, is potentially at risk with respect to charges that have a maximum of 14 years. So she's got all the reason to not want to go to the police on this one as compared to him. All right, let's jump back in here.
Panic, I'm not stalking you.
Archie? Didn't we have a deal?
No, Geraldine, we have a secret. Multiple secrets, actually. And maybe we could have done something to help Jason that morning, or maybe we couldn't have. And I won't tell anyone anything, but you need to help me. This summer, the only thing that kept me sane was writing these songs. So here's my not-so-indecent proposal. I want to do an independent study with you as many mornings a week as you can spare, and I swear that's all it'll be. I won't tell anyone about July 4th, ever. Deal?
Monday, Wednesday, Friday. 7:30 a.m. before first period. I'll set it up. See about getting you credit.
All right, so that one raises some real interesting issues, because what he's doing there could potentially be considered the offense of extortion. Now, extortion is kind of an interesting offense because in Canada, this is a bit of a hybrid between sort of threatening offenses, but also blackmail. So extortion, everyone commits an extortion who, without reasonable justification or excuse, and with intent to obtain anything, by threats, accusations, menaces, or violence, induces or attempts to induce any person, whether or not he is the person threatened, accused, or menaced, or to whom violence is shown, to do anything or to cause anything to be done. So Archie in this scene very much wants her to spend some time helping him with his music. He thinks that that's going to be the distinction between what makes him become the next big thing, what allows him to have musical success. And Ms. Grundy is, of course, reluctant. She doesn't want to be alone with him for obvious reasons. She's potentially in some serious trouble here. And she doesn't want to, she just wants to make a clean break. She doesn't want to have anything to do with him. So he's got a problem. She doesn't want to do the thing he wants her to do, but she has this secret, and this secret with a potential of 14 years in jail. Now, she's not actually going to get 14 years, but she'd be looking at some serious time on that. Meanwhile, he goes and says, listen, I'm not going to say anything, but I need you to do something for me. So the clear implication is, if you don't, then I might say some things, and then she's in some trouble, right? Now, all of this is going to be an interesting aspect because he doesn't actually explicitly say, listen, do the thing or I talk. He never actually says that outright, at least not so far. I've only seen episode 1. I haven't watched any further than that. However, the implication on that one is pretty heavy. I suspect that if that went to trial, if he were charged with the extortion, that the Crown case would be, listen, it was clear what he meant. When he says, listen, I'm not going to say anyone or anything, but I need you to do this for me. It's kind of a do this or else, do this unless. And that's where the extortion potentially kicks in. His defense would probably be, listen, I was trying to communicate this in a completely different way. I was trying to say, listen, I'm not going to tell anyone, full stop. You don't need to worry about me. I'm safe. I am, also asking you for a favor. And ultimately that would be up to the judge or jury to decide whether or not they thought that was something that was, whether or not they thought that this was actually an effort at extortion versus whether or not they thought that this was simply him saying, not going to say anything at all. All right, let's go back to the episode here. I'm not showing you the full episode, of course, just critical key clips, just the bare minimum to kind of illustrate what the legal issues I'm talking about are here.
There are strangers in my house. They came through the water.
Oh my God, Jason. He was shot. On Monday.
So the question of could we have done anything for him? Probably not. Not with the bullet hole right square in the square in his forehead. I'm thinking that he was probably toast right off the bat.
The autopsy on Jason's body would take place. And on Tuesday, halfway through fifth period, the first arrest would be made.
All right, so what would that first arrest be? Of course, I have only watched episode 1. I haven't gone any further. However, the starting point I would expect in terms of where they would start with arrests here in Canada would be this offense right here. Offenses relating to public or peace officer. Everyone who resists or willfully obstructs a peace officer or peace officer in the execution of his duty or any person lawfully acting in aid of such an officer. How is this obstructing a peace officer? Well, it seems likely if she provided this statement to the police that this would be and that's an assumption here. I don't know if this is a story that she only told to, her friends, but it seems likely that she told this to the police as well. And so at that point, lying to the police is itself an offense in terms of the criminal code here. It's an obstructing the peace officer. Lying to the police can take all sorts of forms, but if she's saying, hey, listen, he was reaching into the water for my glove and he fell in when she knew he was shot, or else something else entirely happened, maybe he swam in, and this would be at least, there's all sorts of other possibilities. Maybe he fell in, came up out of the water somewhere else, and someone else shot him further downstream. That's a possibility. But they'd have enough here to lay the charge, and that laying the charge lets them arrest her and then keep her in custody, and at least until she has a bail hearing, and try to sort of put her in a room and try to press a statement out of her, another statement. And so that's what I'd expect they'd do. They probably don't at this stage have enough to get a charge of murder, because I don't know that there's any evidence that she actually did the shooting, as opposed to someone else shooting at them and she's telling them BS for her own reasons. That said, if she is ultimately charged, and that would depend on, I'd want to see some of the autopsy stuff. Like, is this a situation where he's got powder burns? Like, if this was a close-up shot where he's got, if a shot is from close up, you get powder burns, which are the gunpowder is still burning and causes its own burns. Whereas if it's further out, the gunpowder doesn't make it that far. Think of like throwing a handful of sand versus throwing a rock. The rock is going to go a lot further. The sand will fall away. That burning gunpowder either combusts in the air, or else it doesn't, fly as far as the projectile does. So if he's got that sort of, burn, or particularly if it's, If he's got a mark there's different marks that are left if a firearm is placed right up against the skin and fired. Those kinds of things would be much more likely to see her charged with a murder or something along those lines. But certainly, as a starting point, if they wanted to pursue her on the false statement, that at least gets her locked into a room. Now, in Canada, in the States, you have a right to have a lawyer in that room with you. In Canada, you only have a right to talk to that lawyer before you go into the room, and then you have to be there on your own. So lots of people speak to a lawyer and get the very sensible advice, don't provide a statement, don't talk to the police, and then turn around and do exactly the opposite and do provide a statement, because it's very difficult to hold up and not to hold up to that kind of pressure. Lots of people think they're going to do fine in that room and don't. I don't know, never having been charged with an offense, I don't know how I would hold up myself. But I like to think I would make the right call. I like to think I would listen to my lawyer there and to respond appropriately. But you never know until and unless it actually happens to you. Anyway, that's a lot for episode 1, and that's not even all the issues. There's actually some other issues that I haven't addressed yet, but maybe will in a future video if I keep going on the Riverdale thing. Let me know if this was something of interest to you. Let me know if there's other shows out there that, you want to see me sort of pick apart as a Canadian lawyer. There's some content like this out there already for American lawyers, but not a lot of Canadian content out there. So I'm trying to sort of broaden that field, I guess. Anyway, thank you for watching. I want to thank as well all of my supporters. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, please share it with your friends, please subscribe to see more content. I want to thank my Patreon supporters at the $50 level: Jonathan Wheeler, Jason Elliott, Canada's National Firearms Association, Slightly Left of Center Good-Natured Hypothetical Firearms Association, Mike, Kyle Martin, Jean-Guy Toussaint, the CCFR, and the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. At the $30 level, Sights and Arms Limited and Marc-Olivier Damour. And at the $20 level, Matt Ward, Mark Whittington, Raymond Del McKinnon, Jane Babe and Luxor, Dale Nesbitt, Cameron Johnson, Bruno R., Andrew Elsich, and Aaron Del Salt. Thank you as well to all of the $10 supporters who will be in the crawl immediately following. Thank you to everyone watching, and thank you. I hope this has armed you with knowledge, and see you next time.